It's been over 20 years, but the next numbered entry in the Homeworld series is mere hours away. So I've made this video to give you a solid idea of what to expect when you boot up for the first time, covering a bunch of sections like technical options, the available game modes, what's coming on the horizon, as well as some initial impressions, though I'll save most of those for the full review. So feel free to jump around to the section of this video that interests you the most. And I want to say thanks to Gearbox for sponsoring this video on Homeworld 3. You can check out the game for yourself using the link in the description and pinned comment. And if you're worried about spoilers, don't be. I will include some gameplay from the first 3 missions of the campaign, but aside from that, there won't be any story spoilers spoken or shown on screen. The other gameplay will be from Skirmish and the War Games mode. If you want to be completely insulated, however, I get it. Just minimize the video, as the footage will include and show full unit rosters from both factions. The technical options for Homeworld 3 are vast. That includes graphical settings, interface modifiers, and control options. Starting with the former, I've spent most of my playtime using an extremely aged GTX 1070 running at 1440p. In fact, that's where half of the footage you're seeing on screen came from. And to my surprise, it ran exceedingly well. There were slowdowns, of course. This is an 8-year-old graphics card, but even at lowish settings with Intel's XeSS upscaling, the game looks really great, with impressive art direction and visual effects. I did end up installing a much higher end graphics card late into my playtime, a 4070 Ti Super, god what a dumb name, and as expected, the game looks excellent at high settings. I think I might be getting CPU bottlenecked, as reducing the eye candy doesn't seem to net me the performance gains that I'd expect. My processor is starting to show its age. Still, you can confidently know that if you've got even just a mid-range PC from the end of the last decade, Homeworld 3 should run pretty damn well, and look good doing it. It also sounds fantastic.
Tracking hostile frigate. They're firing. Break back.
Mothership taking damage. A resource controller has been destroyed. We've lost a resource controller.
Blackbird did an excellent job on the soundscape in Deserts of Karak, and Homeworld as a series has always stood out with its audio direction. And all of the hallmarks of the series remain here in this newest entry. Endearing and immersive chatter between ships.
Remember when I requested a turret and was denied? Yeah.
Cracking good weapons effects.
Copy. Pushing through.
And an incredible soundtrack. Penned once again by series veteran Paul Ruskay. Seriously, the soundtrack is legitimately excellent. Take a listen. Homeworld has always been unique in its input methods, to the point where I had a friend who said it's never a true Homeworld game unless the controls are immensely confusing on your first try. The first game was distinct as a fully 3D environment, and in the 90s it stood out in the sea of isometric strategy games that dominated the market. And as a result, it was a lot harder to pilot, especially when you were new. Homeworld 3 retains the complexities of the original games, but it actually goes to lengths even greater than them or Deserts of Karak, as it now also includes a lot of 3D terrain elements that obscure sightlines and vessels themselves while retaining that full 3D movement. But thankfully there are a bunch, and I do mean a bunch of options, to get the game feeling just right. There were some criticisms about the game's control systems during the Next Fest demo, and while I can't speak to those personally, as I didn't actually try it myself, playing the game now, the controls were not a problem for me at all. In fact, I found them to be really great. As I said, there's a ton of options to customize it, but as a starting point you can choose between the legacy style of Homeworld 2 and the remastered collection, or the modern style of Homeworld 3. If you've got muscle memory from years of the originals, then that legacy option may be the best fit for you. I would encourage you to try the modern settings though, because within 5 minutes I was up and running and I found them to be really intuitive and easy to use. Using WASAD to fly the camera just makes sense, and I'm glad the developers decided on implementing that following Deserts of Karak's refusal to use WASAD for the camera. And once you get used to the first-person style of rotation when using the right mouse button, and having Q and E change the Z height of the camera, it is really easy and very quick to get the camera to where you need to go. Lastly, the orbit camera remains when focused on a unit, which is tied to middle mouse button. So yeah, I think the controls are great. Give the new system a try and see what you think. And if you need time to get used to it, you can even reduce the in-game speed of the campaign, or even pause it entirely. And as an aside, seeing a ship get torn to pieces at 25% speed will never get old. Also, holy hell, I am super glad that the bounding box attack option made a return here, because it is by far the easiest way to quickly target smaller enemy formations and individual units. It also makes targeting groups of units much easier, as you don't need to queue up attack orders. Simply hold control, click, and drag. Easy. I don't remember using this as much when I played earlier Homeworld games. Maybe it was that I didn't read that line in the tutorial, or I simply forgot. But here, I was using it constantly, and in the original version of the script, I even thought it was an innovation created specifically for this game because of how good it was. Glad I got that fixed. The comments would have been brutal. Now, like I said earlier, there won't be any story spoilers for the campaign here, but I will talk briefly about what you can expect from it, so you can decide on whether you should be interested in getting the game based on the campaign alone. Which had better be the case, because it wouldn't be a Homeworld game without a worthwhile story mode. Well, I'm happy to say that I really enjoyed the campaign. It took me about 9 hours to complete, and depending on difficulty, it'll probably land you in the 8 to 14 hour range. I played on medium, which felt fair. It provided a decent challenge that did leave me with a couple of mission failed screens throughout. As for the presentation, this was one aspect that I personally was really excited about. Something that surprised me with Deserts of Karak was how unexpectedly great the presentation and cinematography were. And I was hoping that Blackbird would deliver that again with Homeworld 3. And deliver they did, because damn, Blackbird seriously cooked here. I can't share most of the best bits, even though I wish I could, because of spoilers, but even in the first couple of sections, there are some truly awesome visuals on display. The little details are fantastic. I won't say any more, but later in the game, boy, I was grinning from ear to ear more than a few times. The last thing I'll say on the story is that it does venture into some interesting places. You'll see what I mean if you play it. It may not click with everyone, and for me it did get overshadowed a bit by the fantastic presentation. Look out for my full review later on, where I will be diving into the campaign in full, spoilers and all. Mechanics wise, Homeworld 3's campaign stays interesting throughout the runtime. There's quite a few unique scenarios and challenges to overcome, as well as a good use of the 3D terrain in terms of gameplay options and mission objectives. The persistent fleet between missions from games past makes a return, which is great, and thankfully it inherits the default fleet option from Deserts of Karak, where you can start a mission with a preset number of ships if you have unintentionally screwed yourself somehow in a previous mission. Aside from the campaign, perhaps the most interesting thing about Homeworld 3 is the War Games mode, a new co-op mode that takes inspiration from the ever-present and popular roguelike genre, and attempts to transplant some of its gameplay into a strategy setting. You can play solo, or with up to 2 friends, as you run a gauntlet of objectives and maps with increasing difficulty and your choice of multiple artifacts that become available as you play. These are special upgrades that change how units in your fleet operate and perform, and can be pretty significant. At the start of the game, you choose a fleet composition, which dictates your starting faction and units. This is basically like your character select screen. And from there, you're on your way. The mode has a decent amount of replayability on first glance, and that may indeed be true, However, this mode is one of the reasons I'm going to be doing my full review on Homeworld 3 a bit later, because I really want to put it through its paces. I was a pretty big fan of roguelikes back in my university years, and upon hearing about the existence of this mode, I was very intrigued. So I want to make sure I've completed multiple runs with all of the fleet comps, played solo, played co-op, changed the difficulty multipliers to hell and back. You get the idea. But on the surface, it's definitely a fun mode, and I do hope that upon further playing, I can come back and tell you it's worth putting a significant amount of time into. Again, you can catch that in the full review, coming soon. Lastly, in the modes department, we have classic Skirmish, with both factions available with up to 6 players. The maps are the standout for me, as they really illustrate how much work BBI has done to make them interesting. A stark contrast to basically every other map in Homeworld's history. Unfortunately, there's not quite as many as I would like. There's only 6 available right now, spread across different numbers of player slots. It doesn't leave many options when you're just looking for a 1v1 or a 2v2 map. Hopefully they build this roster out in the future, and while I don't love the idea of having to rely on the community to sort it out using the modding options that are coming with the game, it is great that that avenue exists, and I'm sure map makers will make some really good ones. Having that system all be integrated into the game as well will surely make getting them a lot easier. I'm super glad to see the return of the Fleet Painter as well, which allows some decent customization on the visual front. There are a bunch of presets that include some cool nods to previous games, so whether you choose one of these or make your own, you can truly make your fleets as beautiful or grotesquely hideous as you like. After my first 20 hours or so with Homeworld 3, I am quite impressed with how it's turned out. The presentation is some of the best in the genre, and the visuals and the soundtrack, it's all incredible. I'm looking forward to putting another 10 or 20 hours into the game and writing my full review in the coming weeks. I do hope BBI can get some more maps into the game, and I look forward to seeing how they expand the Wargames mode, as they say they will in their published roadmap. Speaking of, I'm particularly interested in seeing what these mysterious new factions might be. I've got some guesses, but we'll have to wait and see. Thanks again to Gearbox for sponsoring this video, and thank you for watching it. Keep your eye out for my full review coming soon, and if you'd like to support me and what I do here, then you can do so on Patreon or through YouTube memberships. You'll join legends like Dakayo, Bad Ghosts, Sean, Grey Spirit 4, George, John Kaiser, King Thickums, Pavel Bram, Christian, Dan, Orion, Disrufkin, and Cameron. And of course my paladins, Johnny, Marika, Age of Cause, Joe, Tank, and Empyrean. So thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.